And good evening, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Weekend Wrap from CrowCast. Joining me are my usual cohorts, Nikki and Macca. How you going, guys?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Very well.
Good to hear. Bit of a standard win for the Crows this week, but some other interesting results. So we'll get right to it and go through the weekend's results. And Friday night, we had the Western Bulldogs comfortably in the end against Carlton, who I don't think are going to win a game this year. And how long does a rebuild take?
Well, this is one of the AFL disgraces, of course. 16th versus 18th, and it's on a Friday night. And Carlton, who would not beat a bloody egg, let alone win a game, and they are hopeless. They are hopeless. And that lying Gillan McLaughlin, who said 2 years ago to Port Adelaide and ourselves that if you want Friday night football, you have to be winners. You have to be winning all the time. Carlton, they can't even win a fucking raffle. I mean,
and that's even when they're rigging it.
Oh, that's fantastic, Macca. Go for it. Is this a Macca's Sweets and Smacks?
Oh, yeah, that's it. Perfection. So we also played in the SANFL, so the Crows played at Norwood that night. And so when I talked to my parents, like, do you want to go to the SANFL? And they're like, oh, it's a Friday night. And I said, yes, but would you rather stay at home? Would you rather go to the SANFL, watch us probably get beaten? Or would you rather sit at home and watch one of the worst games of football in Bulldogs Carlton? They're like, yeah, we're going to the SANFL.
Yeah, good choice. Saturday, come on, mate. It's a rap show. We don't care about the rest of them, really. We're just doing it because we want to be complete. Saturday, we had Sydney how do you read form, for Christ's sake? Sydney getting up over Geelong 86-69 down there at GMHBA Stadium. I reckon Geelong have so much trouble saying their stadium that half the time they forget to play. But really good performance from Sydney.
Well, sorry, Mickey, I was just going to say, I don't think Geelong are really that good. And I know Sydney played a real crapper last week, but they were Buddy conscious and ruined many an opportunity by looking for Buddy when they could have kicked elsewhere. But I think on the last three times that Geelong have been beaten at that Oval, and they've only lost 3 out of the last umpteen.
Yeah, 21 or something.
Yep. And they've all been to Sydney.
And Sydney have a really good record there.
And I think the reason for that is the fact that Sydney play on a small ground and a narrow ground, and this Geelong ground is like that.
It's not actually that, Macca. It's actually where Sydney train at. Where Sydney train is exactly the same dimensions as Cardinia Park.
Oh, it's fucking close, Nick. You get to go.
Well, yeah. No, I thought it was the
I really
SCG,
liked your point,
it's actually,
Macca.
Yeah, but it's not the SCG itself. It's actually the fact that they train on a ground that is the exact same dimensions as Cardinia Park.
I'm going to give you a point each. I'm going to give you a point each because I think obviously it's the training ground, but obviously also the fact that they play every second match at the SCG. I think you've. I'm giving it to you, Macca. It's a good point, and Sydney do have a good record down there, and. Geelong, as far as I'm concerned, you just break even with them in the midfield and you've pretty much got them because they've got nothing at either end.
You summed it up nicely there.
Including one of the dumbest footballers ever in Hawkins.
Oh, yeah.
God. Who dresses him in the morning?
His kid.
I mean, really, he's got away with just being a big bullfed for quite a long time.
He is hopeless.
Yep.
All right, and then we had the Power, pretty convincing winners over North Melbourne, shattering their little early season form bubble. Port 102 to North 69. I watched bits and pieces of that game. Port looked okay. I just didn't think North brought all that much to the table, to be honest with you.
I think you summed it up very well there too. It wasn't one of North's greatest games, and I know they've won. They had won 3. Was it 3 previously? And when I saw the way they played against Port, I wondered how, because it was look for Ben Brown. If Ben Brown couldn't get the ball, well, then nobody got it. I didn't really think that Port beat much. One thing I must state, though, I really underestimated Westhoff as a player. having watched him this year with having had a ruckman, this guy's a very good player.
Well, I mean, there's never been any doubt that he's a decent player. As far as North Melbourne's concerned, I think this is the first week I think that Ben Brown didn't really get amongst it, and of course Jared Waite was having an off week because he had a good week last week, so that means that in 2 weeks' time, that's when you got to get on him because that's when he'll have another good game. But
I was going to ask where Donkey's favourite player. What did he do?
Yeah, not that much. GWS Brisbane, that was a pretty average sort of game. GWS 77 to Brisbane 43 at Spotless. GWS not looking terribly convincing at the moment.
Not one of their greatest hours, I don't think. I watched the game, and it's the same old story that we say about GWS. They've got so much talent that they believe. They believe they just believe they're going to win because they're very good, but they don't have the desperation the clubs that aren't quite as talented have, and that's why they struggle when it comes to finals.
I mean, let's be fair, their game was probably similar to ours in terms of expectations, and it's hard to get yourself up for those games, but they really needed to win by more than 34 points. But
I think so.
Yeah. Hawks and St Kilda. The Hawks continuing on their good early season form, albeit at UTAS Stadium against a pretty average St Kilda. The Hawks getting up 89 to 54. I didn't see the game. Any of you guys see it?
No, not much. No. Not very interested in it. And I got to say that the St Kilda coach has got to be saying, "Thank God for Carlton."
Yeah, fair. I mean, fair call. But really, Richardson's what's this? His third year now.
Yeah,
at least, yeah.
So
see, I actually the first two seasons. No, I think it actually might be his fourth. The first 2 seasons that he had them up and going, even though they were often getting belted, there was a really nice system and structure. You could see what they were doing and what was being built towards, and they were quite good to watch. I don't know what's happened this year.
I just want to go back to the GWS game for a second because PJ raised a point saying that GWS have a bigger injury list than we do at the moment.
They've got to have a massive injury list. There's no doubt about that. And
the point I guess I'm looking to make is that yes, they do, but if you have a look at their squad and the way their squad's made up, they've got a ton more depth than us, or they should do, with all the bloody first-rounders they've got. And it makes you wonder how many lads' careers have been killed by languishing in the NEFL for the last couple of years.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of kids who probably are on the periphery at GWS who, if they'd gone straight to another club where they weren't competing against 20 that were like them, they might have had good careers.
Yeah, I wonder whether. I mean, that's never made mention of, but there must be a ton of talent sitting in the NEFL there that, as you say, Macca, would at least be fringe 22 at other clubs, and you'd think with a decent run at it, could be playing, first 18 at AFL level, and I guess that's the downside of. What was opportunities for a lot of kids in the first place. But anyway, let's move on. Today, I tipped Essendon in this one. I was disappointed with Essendon. Melbourne getting up 108 to 72.
Yeah. And Melbourne's record at Etihad is woeful.
Yeah.
I caught on that too, Nicky. I picked Essendon for that very reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with Essendon at the moment. They started off well, but I still think they're a forward short, Essendon. Bit too Danaher focused.
They're a bit bipolar.
Yeah, they're a little bit more than a forward short. I think they're probably about two good forward short. They have a pretty good midfield, but they burn the ball a lot, a real lot.
Yeah, they do.
They play like millionaires, and of course they're not.
Well, it's kind of like a kamikaze style, and it's not dissimilar to how Richmond play, but they just don't have the talent that Richmond do to be able to pull it off.
Talking about millionaires, Melbourne, 750,000 or whatever it is for Lever, and 2 first-round draft picks. For a guy that's really struggling in the back line, they must be saying, what the hell did we buy him for?
Well, and not only that, he's come out this week, if I read correctly, it's saying talking about the pressure that he's under and all the rest of it. Well, I guess you make your own environment, and unfortunately, the way Lever has carried himself and conducted himself over the last 12 months, he's put all this pressure on himself, all this scrutiny on himself, and people are going to have a stab at social media and all the rest of it, and he's just got to wear it.
Yeah, whereas I was bitter when he first went, I'm very thankful he's gone now because, the 2 first-round draft picks and Dodo has stepped right up, just as you did say he would, Dickie.
Yep.
Yeah, fantastic. Anyway, we'll get to that. And Collingwood gallant for probably 3 quarters against Richmond before falling away. Richmond 113 to 70. It was an entertaining game.
Were they 2 down going into the last quarter?
Something like that.
They'd lost 2 rotations, yeah.
Yeah,
Something like that.
You were always waiting for Richmond to get them, though, I thought.
Yeah, I felt like Collingwood didn't make the most of their early chances.
That's true. Yeah,
I felt like they should have been a little bit further in front. And the Derby over in the West turned into a close one. West Coast getting up 89 to 81 in the end. I'd tip Fremantle in that one, but they made a good account of themselves against the top side.
Yeah, I watched it. That was actually a good game. Really good, high pressure, and there was some very nice skills on display, and there's some woeful ones at times. But that was because of the pressure that was being put on. So whilst it was low scoring, it was quite absorbing a contest.
Well,
and the one thing you really got to give Ross Lyon credit. He is playing a swag of kids in that side, an absolute swag. And look, most of them are performing very well. And yet, as Nicky said, it was an excellent game to watch. I kept switching between the 2 games, but ended up concentrating on the last one because it really was. You could see that one was going to go right down to the wire,
yeah.
And in the end, it was just that West Coast have that little bit more experience and slightly cooler heads when the pressure was really on at the end. But full credit to Ross Lyon what he's doing with the kids there.
Yeah, I think losing Walters didn't help Fremantle either.
He is such a huge loss for them at forward line and into the midfield. He's such an underrated player.
Yep. And look, let's go through the ladder. Speaking of Fremantle, they're only percentage out of the 8, and I think out of all the teams out of the 8 at the moment, they look as good as any other. They certainly look around the mark. I mean, they're probably on par with Collingwood and Geelong at the moment. You'd think that North might be in a bit of strife, and even someone like Sydney. But at the moment, we find ourselves with joint leaders, Richmond and West Coast. Richmond up on percentage 141 to West Coast 128, both on 5 wins. And then on 4 wins, we have GWS, Hawthorn, Adelaide, Port Adelaide and Sydney. North Melbourne, the best of the 3 winners in the 8, and then out of the 8 on 3 wins, we have Geelong, Collingwood, Fremantle, Melbourne and Gold Coast. So quite an even spread there, although there's a 20-odd point or 30-odd point percentage wise between North and Gold Coast. On 2 wins, Essendon and Bulldogs. Bulldogs lucky, I think, to have 2 wins at the moment. And then Saints on 1 win, and then Brisbane and Carlton yet to open their account.
It's nice actually seeing that there's only 3 Victorian teams in that 8.
Yeah, it's always nice when the interstate, you watch it, if it ends up like that, we'll have a Victorian summit on the state of football, and we'll be having to play all our home games at Etihad and all that sort of shit.
And what can we do to help the Victorian team?
Well, it's all about that, isn't it? Anyway, no bloody music again tonight. I don't know what's going on with my thing, but anyway, no music.
At least your computer is actually letting us cast.
Yes, it's fine. I reinstalled Windows, and for some reason it's not recognising any of my audio files now. But anyway, and for those people that are crying about their tips, I'd just like to point out, and g'day to Donkey Magoo if you're listening, I won my first Dream Team match of the season this year and outscored Donkey again. He was quite humble in trying to offer me some help a couple of rounds back, and I politely declined. And I think now we're starting to see why I would have declined that offer from Donkey, because clearly I'll overtake him by the end. How are you going, Macca? In your dream team, by the way?
Not going very well, but I lost last week, and I made a couple of dumb trades, and I deserved to lose. So,
Deserved it.
yeah, I did. I was tossing up. I could have gone A or B. Went the wrong way, and and I lost by about 20 or something like that.
Yeah.
And it cost me anyhow. So, but no, back on top. Back on top of the ladder.
Righto. Well, anyway, let's get on to the Adelaide Gold Coast game, and it was Adelaide comfortable winners in the end. 16 goals, 14-110 to Gold Coast 9 goals, 862. A margin of 48 points. And before we get into the head-to-head stats, some general comments on the game?
Oh, you go first, Nikki. Yeah.
It was actually really interesting sitting there in that first quarter. The crowd there wasn't kind of like that cheer at the start. There was this low mumble, and it kept up for the whole first quarter of like, we're not really sure what can we trust this team. Kind of that's the way I took the crowd was reacting to it. Was like, we're going to have a Collingwood, or are we going to have a Sydney? Are we going to have a Collingwood? We're going to have a Sydney. And I think that did sort of affect, it seemed, that overall atmosphere of the whole game. I do, though, think the game was pretty much over halfway through that first quarter. Mm. We were using them as witches' hats. It's just we didn't quite capitalise on it as we should. There were still some really nice moments. But, yeah, it was, as PJ Crow said, it was a flat crowd because it was a flat game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was going to say, you shouldn't have been wondering too long, Nicky, because which one we had, because, like you said, the game I thought was over at the 15-minute mark of the first quarter, where we showed quite clearly the difference between us and them. And if it hadn't been for Jenkins and McGovern missing certainty, the margin would have even been greater. And
we would have been third.
Well, we had come to play, Nicky, and that's why we won contested possessions. Now, interestingly enough, in the third quarter, when we didn't win the contested possessions, all of a sudden they made a comeback, some sort of a comeback. Then we got fair dinkum again in the last quarter, and really, there is a class difference between the two teams.
I think you've both summed it up pretty well. I mean, the game is one of the few games that I've watched so far this season and for quite a while where it almost turned into background noise in my household. It was just on, and because there was no real tension in the game, it was just we were doing other things and the footy was just on in the background kind of thing. But it was over at half time. I mean, the second quarter, pretty much when we started to capitalise on our shots. I mean, for the first half, we had 17 scoring shots to 7, and we were up by half time by 45 points. So, I mean, you knew that Gold Coast were going to come back in the third quarter and try and make a game of it, but you also knew that we had them covered, and that's. And we were down
Walker, and you can actually see how much he controls the game when he's on the field.
Well,
just by him not being there.
Yeah, sorry, that's my phone. We'll cover that in a bit more detail shortly, but you're right, Nick. Our forward structure sort of fell away a little bit when Tex went off the ground. But, I mean, really, the head-to-head stats tell a bit of a tale of the tale of the game, and we outpossessed them by 110 or 108.
That was nice.
108 more disposals, and 31 more marks. You're just not going to lose a game.
The contested marks.
Contested marks were 13 to 3, so plus 10. But that's usually, I mean, those three stats. I mean, Gold Coast out-tackled us, but that's because they were just chasing Guernsey all night, basically. And we'll get to a surprising stat in a minute, but essentially, once Gold Coast gave up possession, we didn't give it back to them. And it was just a matter of us using the ball correctly and getting reward for our efforts going forward.
interesting point there, Phoenix, and it's a very correct one. They out-tackled us, but that's because they were chasing us. And often you hear the commentators say they were very good, they tackled fiercely, etc. But I think the fact that you out-tackle the opposition counts a lot more if you're actually won the game as well.
Yeah, it's a misleading stat, that one, because you can... first of all, there's the definition of a tackle. A tackle doesn't necessarily dispossess the player or impair the player from giving off to advantage. It just basically is a tackle. So, yes, they would, I think you could have 50 tackles and one game 50 tackles could be really effective and have an impact on the game. And the next week, 50 tackles could be ineffective because they didn't really impair the opposition. So, anyway. Look, a couple of surprising stats. We lost clearances, 30 to 42. And of that, we broke even around centre clearances, 11 to 12, but we got caned at stoppage clearances, 19 to 30, which is quite an interesting statistic given that we broke even in the rucks. Sauce certainly didn't dominate, but he got his fair share. But it's almost like we sort of sweated off them a little bit and just forced turnovers through our pressure on the ball carrier, and then we were quite happy to possess the ball until we got an opening going forward.
Yep,
as PJ has actually pointed out, and I witnessed it at the ground, they had an extra in at the stoppage, and we kept that player out. We didn't get sucked in, which is what we've talked about, particularly against Collingwood, and even the week before, we were getting too sucked into the ball. We identified that they did have an extra player, but we made sure we surrounded and set up around it quite well, that they couldn't get that breakout that they want to. But they also like to clog it up.
Yeah.
And kind of rugby style force it down. That's kind of their way. And I think that's what they were trying to do against us.
Well, and it's interesting because
we did it pretty well.
In past seasons, probably prior to Pike, we would often get caught in that regard, where we'd win a lot of stoppage, and we'd just get killed on the second or third possession because we had more players in at the ball, and the opposition had players around the contest, waiting to pressure the second or third disposal out of the congestion.
We used to whine constantly about it.
Oh, bloody hell, yeah. We don't do that so much anymore. Look, we smacked him in contested possession. We're plus 30 in contested possession. We're plus 67 in uncontested ball. We had 340 effective disposals to 243, so essentially 100 more effective disposals in a game of football. That's just ridiculous.
That's insane.
Yeah.
It's dominance. Yeah, dominance.
Yeah. So, to have 450 disposals and go at nearly 75% disposal efficiency speaks not only of our ball use, but also of the lack of effective pressure being put on by the opposition. We were able to pick through their zones. We were able to hit up targets short. Not often did they force us to kick long down the line. We were able to maintain possession as we were transitioning from half-back. I like Stuart Dew. I like what he's doing with that team, but I think they've got a fair way to go in terms of learning how to defend the ball coming out of their forward line. And unfortunately, they just seemed a bit light on up forward. It was Lynch who was beautifully held by Talia, and that was about it.
I reckon they've got a lot of unlearning to do. The players,
right.
because they've had two coaches in succession who, in my opinion, have damaged them more than helped them.
Yep.
Yeah. Where we were doing those short possessions, etc., that's because they were pushing three to block that space, especially in the second half, because Sam May was the loose player. And he's a smart player, and he's such a big body and a great mark. So when we did bomb it, he was there to mop it up and get it out. But we were identifying they're sitting out in that space. No, we're going to chip it around until we can get it close enough and kick over their heads.
Yeah.
And that is a maturity that we've wanted to see from our team.
What I'm enjoying about our transition work, apart from it being a lot calmer, is that in years gone by, when we decided to switch the ball, we would do a full switch. We'd go from one end of the ground, or one side of the ground to the other, and at times we'd do it quite slowly, particularly if the opposition were pressing up, and we'd end up coming undone. Whereas this year, I've noticed we would do our first kick sort of into the corridor, but then we're quite happy to come back to the same side that the ball came from. And what it does is it shifts the opposition zone across, and all it needs is one bloke in the opposition not to get back into position quickly enough, and all of a sudden there's a little gap. And I've noticed that's how we've been picking our way through zones more this year, rather than that slow switch all the way across the other side of the ground. It's a kick in and a kick back out, and then a diagonal, and we're far more creative with that.
Excellent observation, because that's exactly what we are doing. And when they start to twig it a little bit, and if they don't move quickly enough, then we go all the way across.
Yeah.
So you are right, absolutely right. And we're doing that a lot, where we kick to the guy who we might get it, just behind the wing. We go across to centre half back. And then often they're just straight back there when they've identified that somebody's just got loose.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And
there's a lot of thinking going on, which is good.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. If you know what you're doing and the opposition doesn't, then you've always got that split second, and it only takes a second to free up that little corridor to kick the ball to. So it looks a lot more composed, and it looks a lot more variable. We can continue to switch, or we can come back the other way, or if the opposition isn't guarding the corridor, we can go down the gut. So I like it. I like our ball movement at the moment. Let's finish these off. Marks inside 50, 12-6. Contested marks, as I mentioned, 13-3. Rebound 50s, 29-35 against, but that's obviously due to the lopsided nature of the game. What else have we got here? As I've mentioned, the clearances, score involvements, 121-65. We had so many people getting involved. Metres gained, 6-2 to 5-3. That was pretty obvious. We didn't turn the ball over as much as them, and we had about 15 more intercepts. And whilst they won the tackles inside 50 by 8, that was inconsequential in the end. So, I mean, I was wondering what to say about this game because it was a bit pedestrian. But I think when you sit down and analyse what we were trying to do, and the fact that the game was pretty much over at half time, there were some interesting observations to make. And the first one, from my perspective, is what you pointed out earlier, Nick, with regards to our forward structure when Tex went off the ground.
Yeah, you could see Paholke, like those guys, had to spend a bit more time on the ground. His third quarter, he had some right ideas, but you could just tell he was just that little bit tired. So normally, and it's quite interesting, we actually rest McGovern the longest on the bench. He actually gets a longer rest than even JJ or Tex does. And it was also very interesting in that we started the game with Walker, McGovern, JJ. You would consider Lynch is a tall, but he does play as a small. And then our only smalls were Knight and Douglas, who was coming off the back of the square and then actually becoming an extra midfielder. So he's playing a very high half-forward role. So we were very, very tall for the first half of that quarter. And then when we sent our players off, then we went really small. We were happy to make those real changes in height in our forward line instead of keeping to one particular structure. Yeah.
I felt... Yeah. Sorry, go on, mate.
I was going to say there was one particular structure that we did use quite a bit where the half forwards were coming up to the wing and the wingmen were going onto the back of the square.
Yeah.
And that actually worked very well, that one.
Yeah, what I noticed, and I hate to bag JJ because I feel like his effort is up 1,000% this season.
Yeah, it is up at the moment.
But I think it showed, I think, how much JJ relies on Tex in terms of his running patterns and his leading and positioning. because I think essentially when the two of them are in that forward line, he essentially goes, he watches what Tex does, and then he goes in a different direction. But when he hasn't
they've got a really nice cohesion.
Yeah. But when Tex isn't there and JJ's got to be a bit more assertive and a bit more proactive about his own running patterns and be the primary target, it feels like he still doesn't quite have the grasp of where he should be going to. Would that be a fair statement from being at the ground?
A little bit of that column A and a little bit from this column B, which is he finally had a defender on him who's almost as tall as he is and is as quick as he is.
Yes.
Now, normally he gets quite a nice mismatch that he can exploit, whereas he had somebody who was being quite physical on him, and he had to be physical back, and he did, which was great to see. So I think it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of that column B.
Yeah, well done, Nicky. I have to agree with you. When are we going to have an argument?
Next week?
No, we'll have one before that.
Okay.
But, I think that was spot on because May is a very, very strong individual, physically one of the strongest in the AFL, but he's quick. He is really quick.
Mm.
And,
he was being played loose in front of JJ. So May didn't actually go on JJ. He stayed as loose man. So, he had
interfered
Thompson.
with him.
Thompson's good.
Yeah, well, I think, I'd say May's one of the toughest defenders in the competition to stand on.
Yeah. Because he's big and he's square-shouldered, isn't he? And he's got a good turn of speed.
And he's nasty.
And Tex always plays really well on him.
Yeah, I noticed whenever Tex tried to get body on him when the ball was coming in, how Tex often props and tries to get body and guards the drop zone. May was reading that very, very well and just kind of running past him. Yeah. And Tex soon realised that he had to actually hit the lead pretty hard to keep position. But look, just finishing up on JJ, the thing that I like about Josh this last couple of weeks is that he's at least trying. He's doing what we want him to do, which is to make a physical contest. And sometimes it looks ungainly, and I think, as PJ Crow's pointed out in the chat, it often doesn't look natural. But he's doing what we need him to do, which is bring the ball to ground or kill a contest or at least compete. And from your 200-centimetre centre-half forward or full forward or key position forward, whatever you want to call him, that's really all you want. And I'm happy if he brings that effort and intent every week.
Well, I was happy with his game, apart from one aspect of it, of course, which is the 3 set shots that he missed.
Kicking. Yeah.
And that's what he's paid to do, of course, is to kick goals.
He's normally pretty good at those.
Yeah.
I know he is. That's why I'm perhaps emphasising the point, because normally you would think that he'd certainly kick 2 out of 3 every time, if not the whole 3. But he didn't have his radar, as did McGovern. He had no radar at all either.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we can bag him on his kicking because he's generally as good as you mentioned. I think the only thing that I'd say about his kicking is he's got the kind of kicking action that is prone to going off, because he waves the ball around in his run up and all the rest of it, and you've only got to be off a little bit and all of a sudden you're miscuing everything. So you want to be careful, because those things can become exaggerated if you don't keep them in check. I wouldn't mind him having 50 set shots at training.
Well, he's got the perfect shot for goal. I know he takes about half an hour to do it because he's got a longer run than Holding used to have in the cricket. But, but Ben Brown, there's no way that he should ever kick crooked, because he gets up ahead of steam and he's running in a dead straight line. He brings his leg straight through. The ball automatically goes straight.
It's a very simple mechanic, isn't it? Yep. Anyway, look, let's get on to some individuals because it was pretty much an all-played-well situation. But there are a couple of standouts. Look, Lairdy again with his 34 touches, 11 kicks, 23 handballs. You'd probably want him kicking a little bit more, but distributed the ball really well. 10 marks, a couple of clearances, a couple of rebound 50s. Only had the 9 contested possessions, but went at 82.5%. Disposal efficiency, 7 score involvements, and 10 intercept possessions. So another just solid game from the little gnome down back.
Yeah, you have to agree with you. Well, no,
they were saying on Triple M that even though people like to call Gary Ablett the Little Master, they think Laird should also have that title.
Well, I don't think he's quite in the Gary Ablett mold.
But he does play.
No, he's not.
He plays very tall for a guy his size, though.
He's excellent overhead, and the thing is too, he plays well overhead, Macca, because he doesn't fear what's coming behind him.
No fear.
So he doesn't mind stretching out and getting those arms up high. He's not sort of cringing, waiting for contact. Next guy.
Hi, Rory Atkins.
The next guy probably is, not probably, undoubtedly the best game he's had for the club, and thank God they kept him off halfback this week, was Wayne Miller.
You mean they kept him on, not off?
Kept him on halfback, sorry. Running off halfback, I meant. 33 disposals, 19 kicks, 14 handballs, took 5 marks, a couple of tackles, 3 inside 50s, 4 rebound 50s, went at 85% disposal efficiency, 377 metres game, 4 score involvements, and 6 intercept possessions. We've discussed over the last couple of weeks how we've loved seeing him come off half-back, and I just felt like even though some of his disposal and decision-making at times was a little bit off, it was a very good game from Wayne.
Breakout game, I reckon. And hopefully he goes on from here, because he's never got anywhere near 33 possessions before. And he really looked like he was being the man rather than the extra. And, because he was cruising around everywhere, and not unlike you would have expected McLeod to do if McLeod was playing.
Very McLeod off halfback. Very McLeod.
Yeah. Yep.
And for me, why he got so many possessions was who he was playing on. They were trying to go through. So not only was he that offensive, he was also being defensive. He was nullifying that player. But because they were trying to go through there, that was bringing the ball to him. And then he did some great defensive actions. So that helps as well.
He reads the ball very quickly, though.
Reads the ball very quickly. But the biggest improvement in his game, Macca, in my opinion, is that he's staying in the contest for longer. He's not getting knocked off the line.
Yeah.
He's staying over the ball, and that's allowing him to use his speed. And a bit of humble pie from me. A couple of years ago, I had a big argument with a guy on Big Footy, Wayne's World, about Miller, and I'd said at the time that I never thought he'd develop enough strength to be able to be effective at AFL level. And, Miller is proving me wrong at the moment, so I don't think Wayne listens anymore. But if he's having to be listening, then tip my hat to you, Wayne, because you were right on this one.
But everybody argues with Wayne's World.
Yeah, I know. But look, I think Miller has really matured, and as I've mentioned a couple of times, he seems a lot stronger through the core, and hasn't lost his agility. And I think staying in the contest for longer has allowed us to really see the best of what he can do, and let's hope he can continue that.
Well, if he continues that, then we will be starting talking about him as being, well, perhaps not as good as McLeod, but a McLeod type. So I love the way he was just cruising around.
I saw a comment that if Wayne Miller gets 33 touches, Adelaide don't lose, and that's probably a fair call.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good call.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people talking about Gibbsy, but he still racked up 31 touches, 16 and 15, took 7 marks, 5 inside 50s, 3 clearances, 2 rebound 50s, had 12 contested possessions, so he was in amongst it, and still went at just under 75% disposal efficiency. 6 score involvements and nearly 400 metres gained, I think, and 6 intercepts. I think my impression is that he's still. I said last week that I thought he was a bit crook. I think he looked like he was still a bit tired and he ran out of legs. I don't think it's a form taper. I think it's just his health over the last couple of weeks.
I reckon, and people have to also understand, he doesn't play the type of game that the normal midfielder doesn't, because we've got so many inside mids. He is definitely, his role is to play an outside mid. And it looks at times like he's not trying to get into it, but that's his role, to stay out there. And if we get it, to give it to him. And I noticed that he seemed to be really, really matey with Matty Crouch. I saw him a couple of times, like in breaks and that, and just ruffling Matty's hair and all that sort of stuff. And they obviously get on very well. And you could see them combine a lot. And usually it's Crouch getting the ball and just shooting the handball out to him. But Gibbs is playing the exact role that the club wants him to play, which is to be that outside mid and a distributor when he gets the opportunity.
He was really influential in that first half with how dominant we were. It was mostly his work. Then they started getting a little bit more on top in that midfield and those breaks. Once they put Tuke, I think was it Tuke Miller?
Yeah.
They put on Crouchy. So that kind of nullifies stuff. And bloody Crouchy needs to stop calling for the ball when he's got somebody hanging on to him already.
But he's a Crouch.
I know. And we kept giving it to him. It's just like, stop giving it to him.
They love getting the ball. That's good.
Yeah. Speaking of Crouchy, it's not often he's fourth in line, but only the lazy 30 disposals in his comeback game. 14
I
and
know,
16.
a bit poor.
Yeah.
Needs to lift his game.
Admitted himself that he was pretty stuffed by the end of it, and 3 weeks out of footy, it doesn't take much to take the edge off your match fitness. But he still had, as I said, 30 touches, a couple of inside 50s, 4 clearances, one at 70% disposal efficiency. 7 score involvements, and it was a nice return from Matt Crouch, and we just looked that little bit more solid through the midfield when he's there.
Yeah, and look, it just looked before we looked like raw effort, and it just looked a lot classier with him there.
Yep. Vardy's asking for time on ground for Matty Crouch. He still stayed on for 74% time on ground.
Yeah.
That was probably because of the injuries to Tex and then later to DMAC. You'd imagine that he would have been managed a little bit more than that had we not been down 2 rotations. But I felt like he stayed out of the midfield, the centre work a little bit towards the end of the match.
Well, I think he finally got the message, stop bloody calling for it. You're being tagged.
Now, I really want to spend a bit of time talking about this next bloke because a lot of people have been comparing Cam Ellis-Yeoman and Hugh Greenwood, both young guns. Ellis-Yeoman playing his 20th match, and I think people really because Cam isn't fashionable, I think people underrate him. But let's talk through his stats. He had 29 touches, 12 kicks, 17 handballs. He had 3 marks, 4 tackles, kicked a goal, 4 inside 50s, 7 clearances, 1 rebound 50, had 19 contested possessions, went at 76% disposal efficiency, had 4 centre clearances, 3 stoppage clearance, 9 score involvements, and a couple of intercepts, spent 81% time on ground. That is a complete performance by an inside midfielder.
Complete.
He had a very good game.
And even though he still had a few where he was doing that, what you hate, that reach in, he was getting better at putting his body over the ball. A lot more, I noticed that game. So obviously that's something that he's been talked about, that they've recognised, and he's trying to fix that. But I thought he played really well. And it's often quite good. He does this when we give him that little instruction. He's sitting on somebody, and by doing that, that's taking him to the ball. Then he can impact and use that bulk that he does have and strength, and he knows it.
What I noticed of his game last night, was that he's starting to look a bit more composed. He's not. How can I put this? To be honest, he's looking a little bit like Greenwood with ball in hand in tight. He's not panicking with his disposal quite. Well, he wasn't last night. He's quite agile for a big fella, but often I think he wants to give the first give, but he held the ball a little bit more, and I think to his advantage on Saturday night, it resulted in some better decisions and some better disposal out of the congestion. I just thought it was a fantastic game from Cam Ellis-Yeoman, and people think that he's the first out. I don't know whether they know how to football, because he's in that big body in there.
Wasn't that us all on Tuesday night? We thought he might have been out.
Well, I think we did, but I
was coming back in.
I don't think we necessarily wanted that to be the case. We just felt that for balance, that was going to happen. But when you compare his numbers to Huey, and Huey always looks so good when he's in the play. I like, he took a couple of good marks. Let's just run quickly through his stats as a comparison. Only had the 15 touches, 8 and 7. Had 8 tackles, which is his go. 4 clearances. Where are we? 11 contested possessions. Went just under 74%. 4 score involvements and 4 intercept possessions. Hugh stands out because he always looks so composed, and he does those really nifty gives out of tight situations. But at the moment, Hugh's not getting the ball as much as Cam, and I don't think, as much as he looks good when he does get the ball or when he is in amongst the play, he's not there often enough at the moment.
Well, that was certainly the case on Saturday, anyhow. I don't know whether I really can't remember enough to say whether Cam always gets more than Huey, or I think there's been games where Huey's got more than Cam. So
yeah, Donkey on the chat is saying that Greenwood had 10% less time on ground. Sorry, Donkey. Greenwood 80%, Ellis Yeoman 81%. So back in your box,
there you go.
And plus I beat you in Dream Team. So go and have a cry.
So at halftime, when the team ran out, Hugh was actually in his warm-up top. And then he sat on the bench for a while, and we're going, have we lost him as well? And they're like, oh, yeah, you think him's that. But then he came back on. But that first little bit, that was where the Suns were starting to get a bit more involved. They were getting more midfield momentum. And as soon as Greenwood came back on, that changed back our way again. So he might not be getting the possessions, but he seems to control that space quite well.
Don't get me wrong. I'm a massive
it's
Greenwood
great
fan.
It's great having both of them. I would have said initially, like you just said, about there's this perception of Greenwood because of the way he holds it. He might not be able to get those possessions. Those numbers that you read out for Greenwood, that Cam, that actually... Yeah, that shocked me a bit. I knew he had a good game. That is an excellent game.
Yeah, it's very
And that's also, we put him up forward at the end to help us out. And he's really handy up there.
Well, I found it amusing. The commentator said, we're not used to seeing Ellis Yeoman up forward. I think it was even bloody... I can't remember who said it. But, every time Ellis Yeoman has played up forward, he kicks goals.
Yeah,
he does. He does.
So,
are these the same people who think Seedsman are playing off the half-back line?
I don't know.
No, he's on the wing.
Because he's replacing Brodie Smith, and that's Miller.
Hugh Greenwood, how many? What percentage of his possessions were contested?
11.
To me, it just seemed to me that most of his possessions were fiercely contested, which is one of the reasons why he does stand out, because he does win some of the really tough, hard balls, and then his brain is quick enough to do something positive with it.
Yeah. Anyway, moving forward, Rory Atkins. Interested to know what your opinions are on Rory's game, because he had 28. Hang on. 28 touches, 18 and 10, 5 marks, kicked 2 points, 5 inside 50s, 2 clearances. Only went at 57% disposal efficiency with 17 uncontested possessions. 6 score involvements, 508 metres gained. I wonder if that metres gained, I think it does, includes balls that come back over your head. And 4 intercepts, but 5 turnovers. Don't know.
I thought he played well to a point in the sense of getting the ball. And as you say, his efficiency with the ball was poor. And I don't know why, because he's normally a pretty good kick. But I didn't see any outright squibbing of the, not going in when he should.
Oh, there was one where he was. They were kicking into the forward line. He's actually watching the ball go over his head, and he's running towards that player. For me, he should have at least attempted the hands up or something, but he just kind of ran him up. Oh, I can't quite make it. That was the only thing, but that's a very typical Rat. And the reason why I started to laugh when you started to talk about him, the poor bugger in that third quarter, that was just going up and down that wing that he was on, the outside wing. and the outside wing, and he was getting absolutely hammered. And so he's looked at Seeds at one stage and done the switch motion because, I need to go on that other wing, you need to come on this one because I'm starting to run out of legs a little bit, and we didn't have the rotations, they couldn't come off. So they switch, the ball then goes down the member's side. It just kept following the poor bastard. So because he couldn't go off for his rest that he could do, and the fact that how much our wingmen actually do run, I'm willing to forgive that disposal efficiency a bit because he was getting tired, but he was working hard. And there was only that
77%.
Yeah, but he was on that other wing for half a quarter where there was nothing going on. So he got a bit more of a rest.
Look, I think I want Rory to continue to work hard because I think there's so much improvement possible in his game. And the worry, I guess, that I have with him, and it's just an outsider's point of view, and I don't know the guy, no input whatsoever, but my impression is that he's a guy that can be satisfied at times, and I think he needs to continue to strive because 28 posies is a good number, but there are areas of his game that could definitely use some improvement. And at his best, he's very damaging, and he can distribute the ball very well. But as PJ points out in the chat, can we rely on Rory Atkins in a big final? And at this stage, you'd have to say no.
Different story, that one.
Yeah.
You would want him playing for your life.
Well, no, I don't think it would. Whereas the next bloke, Paul Seesman, is rapidly developing into a player that is by far his most consistent season of football. And I wouldn't mind betting he's almost leading our BNF at the moment.
I'd say he's pretty bloody close.
Yeah, 26 Aussies again, 16 and 10.
Him and Laddie.
8 marks, 5 tackles. 5 tackles is a stat that we didn't think we'd be getting out of Seedsman.
I did.
Well, I think we, as in the collective Crows fan community, 4 inside 50s, 3 rebound 50s, 77% disposal efficiency, 9 score involvement, 600 metres gained, which was a game high, and 6 intercept possessions with 81% time on ground. Just another really, really solid game from Seed, and let's hope his body can keep sound because a sound Seedsman is a very valuable asset in our lineup.
He's looking very classy at the moment, isn't he? I thought when he gets the ball, he's just taking it so smoothly, and he's a beautiful runner and a beautiful kicker of the ball. He just looks so good.
He makes great decisions as well. I mean, that's what we did last year with him with that hip issue that he had, and that was, it was very serious. So what our fitness staff did was we pretty much went back to basics and completely rebuilt his body in a way so that he could start to get that consistency and not get those soft tissue injuries. So he was like Brad Crouch, very much so, that same thing. And from what I understand, that's what we're doing with Brad at the moment. He's being kind of completely rebuilt from the ground up, so to speak, because it's worked with Seed.
You mean in terms of his body, his muscle composite, like his muscle distribution or whatever? Or
yep. So just making sure that it's distributed correctly. So when he does get those hits and those knocks, he's able to recover quicker. I know something about one of Seed's injuries, and I'll just leave it at that. But it was pretty damn serious. And he himself has said he thought he may never play football again.
Yeah, he was thinking about retiring. I've heard that myself.
Yeah.
And just on that point, I heard somebody said in the last few days that Brad Crouch's injuries are a permanent type of thing.
That's Bickley. What would Bickley bloody know?
Well, he knows more than I do.
No, he doesn't. It's been proven he doesn't.
He's coached at the club, Nicky.
Yeah, but nobody tells him anything now. He doesn't hear a thing now.
I don't know about that.
He'd have to hear. He's still got mates, Nick.
But they're not telling him stuff.
Oh.
Nicky, I know that.
He wouldn't make that statement unless there was some basis behind it. If it was Rowie, I would agree with you, because Rowie talks shit. But Bickley tries to talk sense, and when he made that comment, I nearly cartwheeled.
Yeah, well, at the moment it's fairly serious OP from what I can gather, and that's not easy to come back from at the best of times. And I wouldn't mind betting that he's out for the majority of the season again, and it's so disappointing for Brad Crouch and for the footy club. And let's hope that it's not as bad as the scuttlebutt seems to indicate. But we're almost at the point, Macca, do you think, where we've moved beyond Brad Crouch?
Well, at least I think we're developing other lads that can take the place. So whereas before we used to say, when we were working out what our ideal midfield was, obviously Brad was in it, I think it's getting easier to leave his name out if he's not going to be around, because of the fact that Cam and Huey, they've taken big steps forward. But one we haven't discussed yet, young Gallucci's he's going to be an excitement machine down the track too.
Yeah, well, he's another one that I went out on a limb and thought that he wasn't showing anything at SANFL level, and it just goes to show that sometimes players just need to be in a better structure, and Gallucci has shown that his speed is a weapon, but not only his speed, this is the bit that surprises me, his disposal. Even though he has turned the ball over at times, and he only went at, 60% again on Saturday night, there are times when his foot passing is elite, and it gets a bit more...
And it's either side.
Yeah, exactly, and it gets a bit more... Let's talk about Jordan quickly. It's 20 disposals, which is obviously a career high, 17 kicks, 3 handballs, 5
nice
marks.
for a small forward.
Yeah, 5 marks, 2 goals, 1, 3 inside 50s, but 6 clangers sort of is a shame. As I said, 60% disposal efficiency, but 8 score involvements, nearly 400 metres gained, and a couple of intercepts as well. And for a lad playing his 3rd game career and only his 2nd game this season, really promising signs, and I'm really happy to be eating humble pie on this guy as well, because I honestly didn't see what his weapon was going to be at this level, but I can see it now.
Oh yeah, no, he's got weapon. He's got a very quick thinking brain too. That's what I like about him. I think he's going to develop nicely, and as you say, some people do better at the higher level, because when they got the good structure around them, where you can be much more confident of what the other players are going to do. And yeah, I think he's fitting in very nicely, and I'd like to see him if he can maintain this sort of form play all year.
The only problem is we've got a player coming back by the name of Eddie Betts into that position. It's like, that's a hard decision to make because of how well he's been going.
Yeah.
He's also got another weapon we haven't seen yet in the AFL, and that's his leap. He's actually got a really good vertical leap because he's a volleyballer. And I've seen it a couple of times. He's done it in the SANFL. And what people need to remember when they're looking at the SANFL is often we're just seeing the stats or in a couple of highlights. We play our AFL game in the SANFL with half the team being country league footballers. So it doesn't quite work that well, but we stick to that structure. And what it does, even we may not win games, that's not quite... They still want to win games, but that's not the full intention. The intention is to teach our players to play our structure. So when they step in, like Dode has this year, and then we've seen Gooch and Paholke, they know exactly where they're supposed to be, how they're supposed to play. Even though those two play in the midfield in the SANFL, they still could step in and know how to play that forward structure in the AFL. And I think that has actually helped us.
Now, we've waffled on a little bit, so let's whiz through a couple of more blokes before we finish up. Daniel Talia, I thought, was the best game that I've seen from Tars for quite a while. 10 and 9 for 19. 8
Lynch
marks.
always struggles with him.
Yeah. But, Talia hasn't been tearing it up. He's been slowly improving, but it was the freest and best that I've seen Daniel play for a while. 8 marks, 2 tackles, Went at 90% disposal efficiency, 10 one-percenters, 2 score involvements, and 9 intercept possessions. You're right. Lynch does always seem to struggle against Talia, but just about every key forward tends to start struggling against Talia. But what I liked about Tale's game the most was his ability and the confidence he had in himself to actually take marks. Something that he hasn't been doing much lately.
He was outstanding. I thought he was very high up in our best, and probably certainly in our best 3, I reckon, because the guy he's standing is regarded as the best best forward in the competition. And I mean, I don't know how tall he is, but he's huge, and he can take marks and he can run. But Talia just towed him up, absolutely towed him up. Yep. And Talia does not get the recognition he deserves from the competition in general.
Well,
and I think he's easily the best fullback in the comp.
Look, I spent another bloody afternoon listening to football on the radio today while I was at work, and listening to blokes continually say, Alex Rance, best defender in the competition, and I just wanted to punch somebody.
Yeah. He's not.
He's a good...
He's the best loose man.
Well, let's face it, he's playing the same role that Jake Lever played for us last year. It's not a difficult role, and we've seen how difficult it's been from Lever to transition from a low accountable third defender, which is basically what Rance is, to a high accountable, key position defender, which we know Rance struggles in because Josh Jenkins towed him up 4 weeks ago. So look, I'm with you. I think Talia's probably in the top 3 key position defenders in the competition, and I would pick Daniel Talia over Alex Rance every day of the week.
Agreed.
Easily.
Yep. Tom Dede had some of the overhead work.
Those marks.
My goodness, just extremely good judgment he shows. Took 8 marks again. 4 tackles, a couple of inside 50s, went at 95% disposal efficiency, 5 one-percenters, 8 intercept marks or intercept possessions. The composure that this young lad shows is just... If he doesn't win the Rising Star this year, there is something
and make
seriously
all Australian.
Wrong. Well, he should. He should.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I liked about his game was he was a little bit slow starting, but in the third quarter when they having their moments, the Gold Coast, I thought he was outstanding in some of the marks he took and other plays he was involved in. He's only played 5 games, isn't it? He's only played the 5 games, and yet his last 2 have just been absolutely outstanding.
He plays like a 200 gamer. He really does. It's admirable. It's just this lad's only going to get better. 5 games in, he's only going to get better. It's fantastic. Look, of the rest, Greenwell we've talked about. I thought he had a decent night. I thought Sauce did enough in the ruck without being spectacular. Mitch McGovern showed signs of returning to a bit of form. Pity he can't kick straight, but 13-1 with 7 marks, I thought, and 6 inside 50s from Mitch. I thought was pretty good. 410 metres gained as well. JJ we've spoken about briefly. Tried really hard. Could have hit the scoreboard a lot more had he kicked straight, but 7 marks from your key position forward isn't bad. Tex, I thought, was going to absolutely have a massive night. Until his hammy got tight. He just looked like he was just up and about for the contest.
Yeah.
It was a real pity. He had like 35% time on ground. He had 7 score involvements in that 35% time on ground. He just looked like he was all over it. And Andy Ottenen in his 100th. We got a special mention for Andy. Didn't have a huge influence on the game, but didn't do anything wrong.
He was a little nervous, you could tell.
Yeah, didn't do anything wrong.
And then, he did what he had to do, and he finally got a mark, and it was like, then he could settle down. Yeah. He was trying to get a goal, but they wouldn't bloody give it to him.
Just on Mitch McGovern and Andy, etc., and Jordan Gallucci, and you say no spot for him, Nicky. why would we not keep Jordan Gallucci up and forward to have two small guys in the forward line and swing Mitch down back in the role that Andy's playing at the moment?
Because Kelly will come back in and Andy will go out for Kelly. Because you've got Kelly to come back in still.
Oh, I forgot about Kelly.
Yeah, and he deserves to come back in.
He does.
He's been a little bit down the past couple of games, but he's still such he's a real dour defender, which allows to the others to free up. And he's a left footer as well, so it gives that nice different look coming out of defence.
Yeah, clearly, obviously we've lost David McKay with what was that, like a hip flexor or something or other? It looked pretty high up.
Yeah, it was high hip, and he was playing fantastic.
Yeah, he was playing
absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And so it was a real pity that happened.
I thought he played an absolutely fearless game.
Yeah, I agree with that.
He was. And considering that he gets a head knock, and as soon as he gets a head knock, we take him off.
Yeah.
Because he gets delayed concussion symptoms. So we're very, very wary of him getting knocks. And to be fair, a lot of people will slam D-Mac, but he puts his body over the bloody ball.
Always.
And that's all you ask. Yeah. All you ask for a footballer to start off with.
And obviously, so losing D-Mac, probably that I think actually that's who will make way for Kelly, Nick.
Yeah. So if that hadn't have happened, I think D-Mac would have stayed in.
Yeah, I
because
agree.
He gives us a nice option to swatch with Miller when we actually need to rest him.
Yeah. Well, and even up on the wing with Seaton as well.
Yeah.
Has there any statement how long he's likely to be out?
No, we don't know yet. We'll find out on Tuesday. Monday. Yeah.
And of course, the other one is Tex, reported as hamstring awareness. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets the week off.
Yeah, fitness staff said he could have kept playing.
Well, apparently it was Pikey that made the call.
Yeah, it was Pikey that made the call. Just went, well, we're in control of the game. Why risk him?
Yeah.
So he said, yeah, we'll send him off for scans. If the scans are clear, and he might play next week.
What I'm really interested in, we've got another reasonably easy game next week, you would think.
You think they're going to get smacked in the media, though, and plus they're coming to play up against Bryce, who's left them. So there might be a little bit of a lift.
They're just not fucking good enough, Nick.
No.
Let's be honest. Is it an opportunity to give Harry Deer a run?
No.
I think he deserves it. Interesting, in the SNFL, we actually played him in the ruck for a bit, and he was doing very well there. So,
look, not for mine, because we've already got.
Or do you mean Riley O'Brien?
We'll have two already out. You don't want to unsettle the team too much.
No, but Tex is out anyway. So who do you bring in for Tex? You got to bring in another marking option, and that's why I'm asking about Harry Deer.
Whether they'll bring Fogg back in, but Fogg was looking a little disinterested and didn't like chasing. I would like to see Harry have a go. Vardy Magic said Himmelberg. He's still not quite ready, I don't think, for AFL level.
No, probably next year for him.
Next year. And I think he's going to end up, he's taller. I think he is already taller than Sauce, so he's the tallest player on our list. But he's just, I think Himmelberg's going to be something special.
I mean, we've seen with Gallucci, Macca, the benefit of playing in a better team. And if we're not going to give Harry Deer a go soon, it's just been a waste of 3-4 years or however long it's been. And, I think it's a good opportunity to play Harry.
Take out that first year, because he played 2 games and did his shoulder.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
We need to give the kid a run. He's had a couple of JLTs and, he can pinch hit in the ruck. So maybe we give JJ a rest out of ruck duties and give Harry a run as a second ruck option.
What do you think, Nick?
I've always been a big Harry Deer fan. I think he's got some really nice weapons. He's a competitive bastard. And the problem is that we have so many tall forwards that we've had to put him down back when we had no backman. And he performed really well there. And then on Friday night, Robin Hunter weren't doing too badly, but they still weren't doing quite as well as we would like. We put Harry in there. We got control of that midfield. So even though he's undersized for ruckman, he's got a really nice leap on him. He's incredibly quick. I think he's actually quicker than Jenkins.
I know he is quick. I do.
He is, and he loves to hit people with that body of his. That's, he's got no fear. I would really, really love to see him get a game, and I think he's kept his head up. For me, it's very similar to Duday. He knows that opportunity is going to come, and he's just doing everything he can to make sure that they don't forget about him.
Well, if he does get a game, I'll be very interested to watch him, because I've only seen him a couple of times in playing for the Crows seconds, and he's gone all right, but nothing that says to me, pick me.
But, Macca, and I don't want to labour the point because we're getting on and we really need to finish up, but he's one of those blokes where he'll be missing for periods of the game, and then he'll bob up and he'll do something that makes you understand that his ability below his knees really impresses me.
Yeah.
His aggression at the contest really impresses me. And he's got a good grab and a pretty good kick. And yes, he has faded in and out of games and at times been quiet, and I think, as Nick points out, at times been played out of position in the twos, but he looks to me to have the kit bag to be, at the very least, a key forward second ruck option. And yes, we've got JJ, but I'm just wondering whether this is an opportunity to give him a run just for his benefit, without detracting too much from the team. Anyway,
he also plays the Walker role when we put him up forward. More often than not, he will be that centre half forward. And then when they do the rotation, he goes to full forward. So he's been trained to do the Walker role.
Well, if you are going to play him, this would be the week
to do it. Yeah. All right. So our Jet of the Week award, and again, sorry for the lack of music, but we'll get into our awards now. The Jet of the Week award. What were you guys' thoughts? Pretty even performance.
It was a pretty even performance, but I think for me it'd have to be Millerer.
Yeah, well, to me it was out of Talia, Millerer and Seedsman, but I'm not unhappy with Millerer. But yeah, okay, I'll go with you, Nikki.
Although if we give Millerer the best young one, can we give Talia this one?
No, Millerer can't be the best young one. He's played more than 20 games.
Bugger.
Yeah,
I'll probably go with Seeds, just because I felt like...
well, that's what my gut was telling me, Steve. I just thought...
Yeah.
Just to help Nikki out to be right for once.
No, honestly, I said that because I thought you two were going to go with somebody else. Because I think out of the three of them, you can't be wrong.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably a fair point, Nick.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Now,
can we have a three-way tie then?
Yeah, let's have a three-way tie. Now, our Wake Up Award, which goes to the bloke that needs to pull his finger out. Another hard choice. Oh, God. I don't know.
I don't think there really was too much. And that's pleasing in a game that we kind of thought was a bit meh.
Yeah.
I'm just running behind down the list.
Or maybe should we give it to their Tom Lynch, who once again lost the Tom Lynch Cup, who our Tom Lynch keeps reminding him. He does at the end of a game. The Tom Lynch Cup, it's still us, because he got sucked into the aggression.
Oh, he just got terribly frustrated. Frustrated, Tom Lynch.
Well, he tried to take it out on our players, and I reckon that partly fired up Talia as well. It's like, you're not going to beat up one of my boys.
Yeah.
And we just gave it back.
I guess the player who struggled the most was Paholke. Because he had a very...
And I think that was just tiredness more than anything.
Yeah, he had a very big task.
Loath to give a young lad...
No, I wouldn't give it to him. I'm just saying he's one that struggled.
J Mac and PJ in the chat both, they want to nominate Lever.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
I'm happy with that.
Yeah, all right. So the Wake Up Award of the week goes to Jake Lever. Thanks for that, guys, in the chat. And the Breakout Award, look,
Cam.
I think it's Cam Ellis-Yeoman again, with an honorary mention to Gallucci.
I actually think Millerer.
No, he's played too many games.
Yeah, he's too old, Macca.
Oh, okay.
Apparently.
Hang on. Well, let's just double check how many. Yeah, he's played. It's 25 games at the start of the season. He's played 29. How many has he played? So he's played 25. Played 5 this season. So he qualifies.
There you go then.
He started at 24. So no, we can give it to WMJ this week, I think.
Junior.
I just thought that was a really outstanding performance.
No, I agree. Yeah. Ellis Shellman was fantastic in and under. Jordan Gallucci was great. As we pointed out, Miles is probably looking for a spell.
Yeah, Duday.
Tommy Duday. Duday is almost already cast a rod for his own back because of our expectations now. And he's too. It was like the first half. I was looking at his stats and just going, "Oh, poor Tom can't hit like his standard because the ball hasn't been down there enough. Yeah. Damn it!" And then they kind of started getting the ball down there a bit more. No, that's better. That's good for Dudes. He's keeping up. He's keeping up the stats.
And I know he played for the opposition, but a little tick to Jared Lyons, who had 25 possessions and 13 tackles. He busted his guts for them. So and he's carving himself.
He always does.
He's carving himself a nice career at the Gold Coast, and I'm really glad for the lad that he went there, and then he's making himself a career.
Yeah. Look, absolutely. Still wouldn't look out of place in our midfield, I don't think. The other bloke to tip your hat to is Michael Barlow coming back from that broken leg again. And
that was horrible.
He's courageous.
I really like Barlow as a player, and I'm glad he's been able to get back and picks up a lazy 23 touches in a losing team.
Yeah.
Look, that pretty much does us, guys.
Cockwomble.
Oh, yeah. Come on, then. Cockwomble.
Hang on. I might have music.
No music. That's fantastic.
Off my phone. Gotta have it.
Oh, that's brilliant. I'll tell you what, the production qualities of CrowCast never disappoint, do they?
Yeah, on YouTube, off the phone, held up to the iPhone microphone. So, woohoo! For me, it has to be Gil, but I do think there are some doozies of nominations this week. I'm still laughing at everybody else coming. So Damien Hardwick today, he said Collingwood are the best team they've played all year. Yeah, honey, you kind of got beaten by us. Have you forgotten that? But obviously, they must be better.
There's a bit of a backhander, isn't it, when you beat a team by 43 points and then say, they're the best team they've played all year. I mean, give it up. Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah. Whatever.
Damien Hardwick also made a very stupid comment after the last game when he said that he's doing his after match interview, and he made the comment that where do you think the game was resolved? And he said, well, I think like if you win the attack, you win the game. If you win the defence, you win the game. And I thought we won the attack, we won the defence. I thought, you effing idiot! Of course, it's just logical.
Guys getting paid about $750,000 to make those assessments. Do you reckon you and I could do that job, or Nicky?
Yeah. We make more sense.
I could almost get a port supporter that could come up with something more intelligent.
In between the bananas.
Then you also have to give a hell of a brickbat to KT and Koshy for lying through their teeth to the public.
Yeah.
They are lying.
They were caught out in their lies. I mean, Mike Smithson just absolutely ran rings around him, but oh god, dipshits. That is not how to react to this type of situation. Who else do we have? Drew Bolton, who thinks Eastman plays off of halfback.
Yeah,
and then Hamish McLaughlin. So just not being quite as idiotic as his brother, but getting close. Stating that the Swans have won 3 in a row, and Adelaide bounced back after their loss last week.
He was obviously reading his tips and not the result, I think.
Yeah, idiot. But it has to be Gil, just for the fact that he's come out and when he was queried about the sexual harassment issue at Fremantle, where the accuser was paid and kind of paid to leave their job, so that the other person could keep their job. And he said, "Oh yeah, our policy, no, we'll pay hush money because it's in the benefit of everybody."
When
no,
did he
it's
say
not.
that?
On really Friday. Well, that's
I didn't hear that.
That's kind of the whole thing. Hang on, I'll see if I can grab it.
Oh, we haven't got time now, Nick. We'll take your word for it.
I'll give it to you so you can. I won't be on Tuesday, but I'll forward it to you so you can do it. But that's basically he said, yes. The policy is we don't want it to go to the cops.
Jesus Christ.
That's just that might be just harmful to the accuser. He's basically telling everybody, well, come ahead, we'll give you money.
Yeah.
Stupid. Well, and it also fits within that whole idea of women only make these accusations for fame and fortune, which is crock of shit.
Well, play music because I think we've got a winner, Nikki. Gil can have it this week.
On the phone. Be with you in a minute.
You haven't got
I'm bopping along to this.
Yeah, but Nikki, you haven't got the cock.
Oh dear.
You got the womble, but you don't have the cock.
Everybody just imagine the look I am currently giving him.
I'm not saying anything.
You don't need a sound for that.
No, the rooster that
I
crows.
know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry YouTube couldn't help me out about that.
Well, that's right.
Load it up on YouTube and I could do it.
Anyway, look, thanks very much, everyone, in the chat. Sorry that got a bit rude there towards the end. Don't forget, you can hit us up on Twitter and Facebook at AFL CrowCast. You can listen on demand on Spreaker or at our website, aflcrowcast.com. And we will be back at 8:30 on Tuesday night for another massive edition of Tuesday Night Live. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Macca. And thanks to everyone in the chat. We'll see you on Tuesday night.
Yep, good night all.
Night all.